What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Turnbuckle Topics podcast. I'm your host, Pat Dineen, and this is my review of NXT, which took place September 19th, 2023. Now, this was a very good episode, not a whole lot of fluff, filler. It's a great thing. A lot of great matches we got to see, some video packages, backstage segments, the usual as far as that's concerned. But this was a very good show. It started off with a recap of last week's main event where we saw Becky Lynch returning to NXT for the first time in, I believe, 8 years, right? When she was brought up to the main roster July of 2015 alongside Charlotte Flair, Sasha Banks. And again, we got to remember that Becky Lynch was the only one of the four horsewomen who never won this NXT Women's Championship. Charlotte, Sasha, Bayley all did it when they were initially there. So Becky went to go and get that one title that's eluded her, and she got the job done. The main event, defeating Tiffany Stratton. Stratton was champion for a few months. And yeah, so that was that. They opened up the show with a recap of that match, which was actually pretty damn good, to be honest. So then they started off NXT this week with the what she call herself, the Grand Slam Man, now making her way out. Start off the episode, we heard some loud Becky chants in the crowd in Orlando. She goes, "The man has come around to NXT. The NXT Women's Championship tour continues. Says we bring the fight every damn night." And then she went on a whole tangent, rhyming and stuff. I'm not going to go through all that, but she mentioned several women from the NXT locker room and, potential opponents. And Becky says that Tiffy time is over. Tiffany Stratton shortly thereafter made her way out and says that she is getting and deserves a rematch for her NXT Women's Championship. And then she proposes to Becky, how about the big time versus Tiffy time tonight? But then she, messed with the crowd a little bit. Tiffany basically said they don't deserve to have the rematch take place there in front of that crowd. She goes, that's not happening. These losers in the NXT crowd, Tiffany's words, saying that they cheered her until Becky Lynch came around the last week or two, which there's truth to that. Even though Tiffany is a heel, the crowd did love Tiffany for the most part. I mean, I could see why. Easy on the eyes, too. Not a bad wrestler either. So, and what's her finisher? The prettiest moonsault or whatever. It's really amazing how she jumps on those ropes and does that. So anyway, she wants a rematch at No Mercy, September 30th. I believe that's in Bakersfield, California. So that match was made official shortly thereafter, which is great to hear. And Becky had enough of Stratton's mouth, clocked her a shot. And right before she could get, really take advantage of Tiffany Stratton, Kiana James made her way into the ring. We had a 2-on-1 attack. Tiffany tried striking back to hit Becky Lynch with a steel chair, while Kiana held Becky to no avail. Becky got a hold of the chair, cleared the ring, and so that was pretty much that to open up the show of this week's episode of NXT. Now, I do find it funny that Becky Lynch was on a long-standing feud, a little bit lackluster, I think most of us would agree, with Trish Stratus for the better part of 2023. On paper, it was amazing. Week after week, it didn't really live up to what we thought it might have been. Although where it culminated at, what was it, Payback, their steel cage match, they both did a great job. So it's not about how you start, it's how you finish, right? So they did an amazing job, both of those ladies. But I find it funny that Becky taking on blondes from every era, it seems. So, we'll see what happens. Their first matchup was great last week. We'll see what happens at No Mercy. I think, if they deliver like they did last week, I think we'll have no problem with, regardless who comes out with a victory at No Mercy next week. So that was good. So next up, we had the Global Heritage Invitational match. We had a Group A final where we saw Tyler Bate versus Butch. Now, look, it's been 2 years. I never really got used to Pete Dunne being referred to as Butch with the Brawling Brutes and such. It is what it is. But it is good to see Pete Dunne back in NXT in some capacity. It really is. You could see in the ring the chemistry these two guys have. They've been wrestling one another since they've been teenagers, Tyler Bate and Pete Dunne. So they were both happy to get in there for the singles bout. Little flashback here. Now, Tyler Bate was the first NXT UK champion back in January 2017, defeating Pete Dunne in the tournament for that very title in Blackpool, England. Now, Tyler Bate had a reign of 125 days. That was until Pete Dunne defeated Bate just a few months later at TakeOver Illinois to become the second ever NXT UK champion. Now, that reign of Pete Dunne's lasted 685 days. Now, you would think that would be in the record books for quite some time. That was until he was dethroned April 2019. That was WrestleMania 35 weekend by none other than formerly known as Walter, now known as Gunther, of course, on the main roster, who went on to not only have an historic reign, but defeated his 685-day reign and having an 870-day reign as champion until Dragunov beat him a few years later. Of course, Gunther now on Monday Night Raw, as of last week, becoming the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion of all time, upwards of 470 days, obviously knocking down the Honky Tonk Man who held that record since I was basically 2 years old. So that's not giving away my age there, but you can do the math. So that's pretty interesting there. So those two had a great match. Bate versus Butch. Butch defeated Tyler Bate with his finisher. I believe it's the bitter end or something along those lines for the win. Great match. Again, these two have been wrestling for years, even way beyond even coming to NXT UK or WWE in general. So that was good stuff. Now we head backstage here. Dominik tried stirring things up with Trick Williams, Melo's, or at least formerly, I guess, we don't see him together that much anymore, with Carmelo Hayes, his sidekick. We've seen this for weeks now. People trying to get in the ear of Trick Williams and saying, look, man, you got to come out of the shadows of NXT champion Carmelo Hayes and do your own thing. And Trick is going out of his way to really become his own person, his own man. He's made that very clear for weeks or well over a month now. But at the very same time, it's letting everybody know, even though they're trying to stir trouble between Trick Williams and Carmelo Hayes, that look, hey, Carmelo's still my guy, man. Even though we may not be coming out together week after week, I may not be the Robin to his Batman per se. He's still my dude at the end of the day. So Dominik tried stirring things up with him. He says, I know exactly how you feel living in the shadows, of Carmelo Hayes, just like I did with my father, Rey Mysterio, ever since he turned on him last September at Clash at the Castle. Dominik said, he tried to sway Trick, and Trick goes on and tells Dom that nothing will drive a wedge between the Trick and Melo gang. But personally, I think it's just a matter of time until Trick Williams does eventually turn on Carmelo Hayes. I could very well see that happening sooner than later. And there's going to be somebody else who comes up to Trick during this episode of NXT to try to get in his head yet again. And we'll get to that a little bit later as the show goes on. So next up, that first match in the what was it? The Global Heritage Invitational match. That was the Group A final where Tyler Bate lost to Butch. So Butch advances. Next Tuesday will be the final. And now it was the Global Heritage Invitational match, Group B final. We had Duke Hudson coming out with Andre Chase of Chase University, going up against Joe Coffey of Gallus. Now we saw the Metaphor Lounge. They were looking on. It looked like they were cosplaying their Matrix outfits up there. They were up there all night having quite a party. And I'm pretty sure that, next Tuesday, the final will be taking place again between Group A and Group B. But I'm pretty sure for that Heritage Cup, that NXT Heritage Cup, we'll be going one-on-one with Noam Dar. I would assume at No Mercy, just a few days later. So we'll see what happens with that. We had Joe Coffey again of Gallus going up against Duke Hudson here. We had this was a good match. It really was. Now it looked like Joe Coffey was about to seal the deal here. That was until Duke Hudson rolled up Coffey for the pin and the win. So now, being that this is based on a point system strictly to advance, we had a three-way tie, two of which who were in the ring right here for this match, and another individual. That other individual was Nathan Frazier, the former NXT Heritage Cup champion, Joe Coffey, and Duke Hudson. So we'd find out that later in the night, being that they're all tied at 4 points apiece, we would have to have a triple threat tiebreaker to find out who will go on to face Butch next Tuesday on NXT in that final, which happens later on in the show. Next up, I've been waiting very patiently to get to this. Roxanne Perez versus Lola Vice, coming out with Elektra Lopez. You want to know who won this match? The fans. We all won. Before the bell even rang, we won. They're all gorgeous. Easy on the eyes, eye candy, call what you want, being as respectful as I can. Let's get to the match, I suppose. Anyway, we hear some Let's Go Lola chants, Let's Go Roxy chants. This was a decent match. It really was, all joking aside, although it was a short one. Roxanne Perez squeaked out a victory. Lola Vice, don't get it twisted, just because she came to NXT early 2023. She is a former MMA or Bellator fighter, 4-1 record. Also an international Taekwondo champion and black belt as well. I believe her actual name, Valerie Loretta. Something like that. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, Val. But in any event, I believe she's around 25 years old. And a promising career. You know, she's doing pretty well for being new to pro wrestling, NXT, so on. So again, this is a good match. And damn, just their entrances just keep playing back and forth in my head. Not a bad thing. So coming back from a commercial break, we had a brief video package from Eddie Thorpe. He called out Dijak to a strap match during this video package. He says, "You wanted a Savage? Well, you got one." Now, I was assuming at first that this match may take place at No Mercy next week, later next week, but it's still going to take place next week on a regular episode of NXT next Tuesday. And yeah, so that will be next Tuesday on NXT. Should be a pretty good one. Honestly, Eddie Thorpe's really good. He's been doing his thing in NXT for the better part of this year. And Dijak, again, I'm glad to see him get a fresh start coming back to NXT earlier this year after, leaving NXT years ago when he was great with Keith Lee and everything. He was great. But then that horrendous run he had on the main roster, no fault of his own, being a member of the dreaded Retribution and going by the alias of T-Bar. I mean, they were just set up to lose with that whole situation. So I'm glad Dijak's able to really come into his own yet again. We go backstage real quick into the locker room of Becky Lynch, where we see Roxanne Perez make her way in there. And Becky gave Roxanne some words of encouragement. It was really nice to see an interaction between the two of them, and a match I'm honestly looking forward to seeing, hopefully sooner than later, between Becky Lynch and Roxanne Perez, even though I like to see them, join forces, maybe in a tag match in some sense. But anyway, Roxanne asks Becky to be her tag partner so that she doesn't have to go at it 2-on-1 later in the night. It's supposed to be Becky Lynch going up against Kiana James and Tiffany Stratton. However, Becky tells Roxanne, "Go and ice her shoulder," and they don't call me the man for nothing. So believes that she could get it done on her own in this handicap match. That wasn't quite the case. We find out later that night who is to join her. So here we have a champion versus champion match. We have NXT champion Carmelo Hayes going one-on-one versus the NXT North American champion Dominik Mysterio of the Judgment Day. Now, of course, Dominik made his way out by himself. No mommy, no Rhea Ripley by his side, the WWE Women's World Champion. She is hopefully just on a storyline basis out of action due to the attack from Nia Jax last Monday on Raw. Both, I believe, Rhea Ripley and Raquel Rodriguez are both out of action for the time being. Hopefully, just taking a little vacay. So anyway, this was a good match. I expected it to be. Dominik Mysterio really hung in there. Of course, Melo, in my opinion, Melo's on a whole other level. But Dom did his thing for quite a bit. We had Ilya Dragunov sitting ringside for this match. This was a pretty good match, but the referee eventually called for the bell sooner than later. A lot going on by the commentary table, which led to the ref calling the match. Hayes inadvertently tossed Mysterio into Dragunov pretty hard, knocking him right out of his seat that he was sitting in ringside. Then Mysterio tossed Melo into Dragunov. Then Mysterio had the balls to go and approach Dragunov and slap him in the face. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys. If there's one person, I'm not even just talking the NXT roster. If you're talking Raw, SmackDown, or NXT, pretty much anybody in the WWE brand, any man in WWE, Dragunov, in all sincerity, would probably be the last person that I would slap in the face. Based upon his temper, based upon his strength. So when Dominik did that, and it was funny that of all people to do that to him, it was Dominik, this scrawny little guy. And so, of course, Ilya Dragunov went after him immediately, chasing him down the ring, beating the living hell out of him. Ilya, however, went for one final maneuver on Dominik, and Dominik ended up pushing Melo in the line of fire, and Dragunov knocked Melo down. Obviously, that wasn't his intended target. So Dominik thought he was getting off easy. Dragon Lee came out, knocked Mysterio to the floor in the entranceway. And it was said on Monday Night Raw that those two will be fighting for Dominik's NXT North American Championship. Dragon Lee getting a rematch against Dominik. What's it been, 3-4 weeks since Dragon Lee lost to Dominik on an episode of NXT for that title. But the good thing here, as far as the NXT Championship is concerned, is Carmelo Hayes will be defending his NXT Championship against Ilya Dragunov in a rematch at NXT No Mercy later next week. And next Tuesday on NXT, there will actually be a contract signing taking place between the two. So I'm sure that will end in a fight, of course. Dragunov, it's funny, as serious as he is and as great of a wrestler he is, there's some underlying comedy to Dragunov. Believe me, I take him serious, 110%. but it's almost funny because you know it doesn't take much to get him pissed off. So when you upset him, you hit him, whether you mean to or not, or you slap him like Dominik did, which I can't believe Dom did. It's funny to see how he's going to react because you know it's not going to end well ever. So that was that. So now back to Trick Williams. I mentioned this a few minutes ago, talking about the initial interaction with Dominik Mysterio um, and Trick backstage. So now Joe Gacy and Ava approach Trick Williams in the locker room. Gacy tells Trick he should join them, become the newest member of the Schism. However, they are looking for new members, right? What's it been, a couple of weeks since the Dyad, formerly known as the Grizzled Young Veterans, their contract ran out, or they finally got out of NXT / WWE. They've been begging and pleading for at least a year or so. So anyway, he says their situations aren't much different. Trick declines, however, says he doesn't want to join them. Again, people, in Trick's ear, like I said before, it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time until Trick Williams, in all likelihood, turns on Carmelo Hayes just because he can't take it anymore. Even if that wasn't his initial plan, he can't take people reminding him that he's been in the shadows of Melo for so long, or at least that's how they see it. But next week, we have a matchup between Joe Gacy and Trick Williams one-on-one. We also found out there will be a women's match as well. Gigi Dolan going one-on-one with Blair Davenport. So now back to the Group B of the Global Heritage Invitational. There's no time limit in this match. Usually, I forget what the time limit usually is, but for this triple threat, there wasn't one. We had Nathan Frazier joining Joe Coffey, Duke Hudson. Great triple threat match. I thought Nathan Frazier was going to win, was on his way to getting it done in the first place, and I also thought he was going to win because he was the former NXT Heritage Cup champion. However, Joe Coffey pins Duke Hudson to win Group B to advance to the finals next week against Butch to decide who is going to go up against Noam Dar. Again, I'm assuming it's at No Mercy for the Heritage Cup. And that's pretty much that. So go backstage. Mustafa Ali tells Mackenzie Mitchell, I mean, he's absolutely furious. He's heated. Tells her that he is the rightful #1 contender for Dominik Mysterio's NXT North American Championship, not Dragon Lee. Why are they having a match on Raw next week? Especially being that it's a brand-specific title, you would assume, right? However, Becky just defended her NXT Women's Championship against Natalya this past Monday on Raw, so I guess titles are being defended wherever the hell they want. So much for brand splits, but that's for another day. Anyway, Mustafa Ali goes on to call Dominik a criminal, call Dragon Lee a liar, and he says that he will deal with both of them next week on Monday Night Raw. Going backstage yet again, tensions building between Fallon Henley, Briggs, and Jensen. Now, this all dates back to last week. There was a 6-man tag match between Drew Gulak, Charlie Dempsey, and Damon Kemp versus Josh Briggs, Brooks Jensen, and Miles Bourne. Again, Fallon Henley was with them, of course. Bourne sent Jensen face first into the steel ring post, turning on his team. Gulak attacked Briggs from behind. Kemp connected with the pop-up neckbreaker to pick up the victory. After the match, Bourne joined Gulak's squad, and that was pretty much it. So this all happened right around the time that Miles Bourne was flirting or giving a flirtatious look over in Fallon Henley's way. They kind of had a moment, So I'm very curious to see if Fallon Henley is going to turn or just up and leave Briggs and Jensen, who she's been with the last 2 years since they all came to NXT 2.0 pretty much together since the debut, almost 2 years to the day, right? And I wonder if she's going to leave them to join Miles Bourne. Actually, I'm not completely opposed to that, I'll be honest. I'm not opposed to seeing Fallon Henley in a heel capacity, so I'm here for it. But during this back and forth, this shouting match between all of them, Baron Corbin made his way out. Josh Briggs and Baron Corbin went face-to-face for a little bit. There was a confrontation, and Corbin was telling them to quiet down, that he was trying to get a massage. They exchanged some words, and Briggs took a jab at Corbin from his encounter with Braun Breaker last week, saying something along the lines of, "I'm surprised you could hear us," and you didn't shatter or break your eardrum or something. Again, they went back and forth, and I would love to see Josh Briggs and Baron Corbin go one-on-one. I'm not saying it's a dream match by any stretch, but I am saying that I would be here for a singles match just on a regular episode of NXT, because I think a lot of people fail to realize how good Josh Briggs is in a singles capacity. I feel like, being that it's been Briggs and Jensen these last 2 years, mainly in a tag team sense, that he's been watered down. Whether that was meant to be or not, it's just the simple fact that he's not fighting singles, right? So a lot of people fail to realize that he was the final Evolve champion until they closed their doors July of 2020. So they only had 10 champions. I remember the first one was AR Fox. Did my research on that. But anyway, very interesting to note this little exchange that happened backstage. Again, nothing to write home about, but I would like to see Corbin and Josh Briggs one-on-one in the near future. And honestly, I'd love to see Josh Briggs just break out and do his solo thing as well. Nothing against Brooks Jensen. I think he's really come along well in the last year or two, but I think that would be a good look. So here we are, right? It's main event time. We have Becky Lynch supposedly going 2-on-1 or 1-on-2, however you want to call it, in a handicap match. Becky Lynch versus Tiffany Stratton and Kiana James. Now, right before they came out, Tiffany told Kiana in the back that she has a surprise for Becky Lynch. Now, it seemed like that surprise was when Becky Lynch was making her way out during her theme song, that it was simply an attack to get the match started. So I guess that was the surprise. But shortly thereafter, Lyra Valkyria made her way out to help Becky Lynch and become her tag team partner. This match went, I want to say, around 15 minutes, give or take. And it ended as such. We got a manhandle slam to Kiana James. This was right after we got a tag from Becky to Lyra Valkyria. We got a frog splash from Lyra from the top for the 1-2-3. Fun tag team match here. Post-match, however, Tiffany Stratton came in, takes out both Lynch and Valkyria with a steel chair. Tiffany hoists up the NXT title over Becky Lynch. And will that be the scene in a week and a half's time at NXT No Mercy in Cali? Becky grabs the microphone, however, right before the show goes off air and says, "That's how you want to play it? It's going to be you and me, extreme rules match at No Mercy." And Tiffany, I guess, which she's got to accept it, right? That's just how it's going down. So Becky Lynch, I'm going to tell you right now, going into this match at No Mercy, I thought Becky would retain her title anyway. I thought there was no doubt that Becky's going to be Tiffany Stratton. They're not going to give her a 2.5-week reign in NXT. It may be short, may only be a month or two. Who knows what the plans are? Maybe Jade Cargill comes in and has a one-on-one with Becky in the near future. Now, we'll see what happens in all sincerity. But realistically, being that it is an Extreme Rules match now, I think that Becky, hands down, has got to win this one. Now, you might think, although Tiffany Stratton is very pretty and she may be girly, she can go. Like Tiffany Stratton, when she needs to get down and dirty, she gets it done. I mean, you saw, it might not have been the nicest thing to do, but post-match, she wasn't happy they lost. She grabbed the steel chair and she hit her with it. She hit Becky and them with it. She even started the show off with a steel chair. So she gets down and dirty when need be. Could Tiffany win? Absolutely. Is Tiffany capable? For sure. For sure. But I do think that Becky Lynch will get the victory at No Mercy. And that was pretty much it. Outside of a couple skits and vignettes that I may have missed throughout the course of NXT, that was the meat and potatoes of this show. So again, I thought it was very good. The go-home show next Tuesday leading into No Mercy. I'm expecting it to be even a little bit better. Not that this show was bad, but you always got to rev it up a little bit to get the people excited for a PLE. And that's that. So I want to thank you for joining me here on the Turnbuckle Topics podcast for this review of NXT, the September 19th edition. And I'll catch you next time. Thanks for listening.